Hello and welcome to Modelling Misadventures. Now most modelers, myself included, will have some unfinished project lying around that they haven't worked on for quite some time. And I'm going to talk about a model today that I started years and years and years ago, but it's been left unfinished. Now this is quite an unusual model because it's made out of paper and cardboard, and it is a model of the Russian Vostok rocket. Now this is a plastic model of that rocket in 1/4 scale, and this is the rocket that took the first Russian cosmonauts into space, including the first man to orbit the Earth, Yuri Gagarin. And this is a model that's in my space cabinet, and I made it again many years ago. Now this paper rocket is much larger than that. It's a 1/33 scale. Now, as I said, I did make a start on this rocket probably 20 years ago, or nearly 20 years ago. And you can see this is where I got to. This is the central section of the rocket. And it's made out of paper, cardboard, and it's already self-coloured. It's looking a little bit worse for wear. I'm going to have to do a little bit of repair work on here because some of the cardboard has got depressed. But you can see it's going to be quite a big rocket when it's finished. Now this rocket didn't come with much in the way of instructions. This was about it, and it basically shows you the numbered parts that you have to cut out from the cardboard and roughly where you stick them together. But if you study it carefully, it's not too bad. And what you get is lots of sheets of thin cardboard like this, which have the parts printed on them, and they're all numbered, and you have to carefully cut them out and just glue them all together. Now what's going to make this rocket a little bit special when it's finished is it's actually been signed by 4 of the Russian cosmonauts that actually flew in it. So starting with Vostok 3, the cosmonaut in that flight was this gentleman, Andriyan Nikolayev. And you can see here I've got a signed photograph that I had done at an autograph fair. And you can see Andriyan here actually signing that photograph. But I also got him to sign one of these rocket boosters. And here you can see he's signed it and he's written on it Vostok 3, or in the Russian, Vostok 3. The 4th Vostok mission, which was flown in 1962, was flown by this cosmonaut, Pavel Popovich. And he has also signed one of the 4 rocket boosters here. Vostok 5 was flown by Valery Bykovsky. And here's a photograph of me with Valery when I had that photograph signed. And he has also signed one of the rocket boosters. There you can see his name, and next to it, Vostok 5. And then in 1963, Vostok 6 took off with Valentina Tereshkova in the space capsule, and this was the first woman to go into space. And you can see a picture here of Valentina signing that little section of the rocket. And here it is, the 4th rocket booster signed by Valentina. So I'm really going to enjoy finishing this model off. I don't know why it's been sitting around for so long, but it just has. But I'm going to get back to it, start putting it all together. And I think when it's finished with those signed rocket boosters on the edge, it's going to be a very unique model. Well, there are all the parts laid out and cut out, and I think it's going to be a fair amount of work to get this finished. So time to start cutting. So I'm going to start off with these remaining 3 rocket boosters, and these are just folded round into a sort of a conical shape like that. So these are the main components for the rocket booster, and just going to glue them together using these little tabs. And then there's all these little extra details that go on where these numbers are, which will be little thrusters and things like that, stabilizers. So that's the basic structure of one of the 4 rocket boosters. This one signed by Pavel Popovich. And now there's some exterior details to go on here. And these are all just numbered in numerical order. So you just put them on one after the other. So that is the first of the 4 boosters finished with the exterior details on. It's got some nice features like little fins and little thruster rockets on here, little vents on there. Now it will have some engines on the bottom, but that comes later. They get put on at the end along with the rest of the bottom of the rocket. So all I've got to do now is make another 3 of these, and then I'm going to do a bit more work on the central part of the rocket. Well, that's the 4 rocket boosters finished. These are the ones that are signed. They look pretty nice, don't they? And now it's on to the center section. Now this bit's looking a bit worse for wear, and I've had to take some bits off. You can see the bottom of the rocket here is looking damaged. That's going to need repairing and reinforcing. This needs fastening back on. I've noticed that in the middle here it's all a bit soft, and there's meant to be a strengthening ring, and that's fallen off, so I'm going to have to open this up and rejoin that. And at the top here, well, that looks a mess, so I'm going to have to try and dismantle that and put that back together again. Now I'm going to strengthen the base of this with some scraps of cardboard like that. Well, that's looking a bit better. And I've just put these little tabs on here to help fasten it back together. Well, this bottom piece is looking a lot better. It's all been reinforced and it's a lot straighter. So not perfect, but a lot better than it was, and that can now be fastened back onto the bottom of here. So I've cut this center section in half here, and this is the strengthening ring that had come loose, so looks a bit messy, but it's still okay. So I'm going to glue that back in, and then I'm going to have to join these 2 sections back together again. Now I'm going to use this strengthening ring here to join the 2 halves back together again. So that will kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now I'm just going to fasten the top and bottom halves together again with that ring. That should just go on there quite nicely. Now I'm going to have to sort out this mess here at the top because it's all got smashed in. And the only way I'm going to be able to do it is to take this off and push it out from the inside and strengthen it again. So I've had to take the top of this off and straighten this out a little bit. It's still going to be a bit creased, and I've printed a strengthening ring out of cardboard that I'm going to put in there to try and get that nice and straight again. So I've put 3 strengthening rings in there, and I think that looks better. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. Now this top bit was a bit crushed as well, but trying my best to straighten it out, and I think that's looking a bit better. Can't get those creases out. Well, that's the centre section repaired as best I can. Okay, so it's time to fasten these 4 rocket boosters on to the main rocket. Well, here it is with the 4 rocket boosters fastened on. Starting to take shape now, looking like a real Vostok rocket, and it's getting pretty tall, isn't it? So now we've got to take these strips and roll them up into a tube like that. That's going to make a little lattice work here, framework that fastens those boosters on. And that's how they look. Well, I've got this part finished and really liking the look of that. Now, the next bit is to start working on the space capsule that sits on top of this. This was the bit where the cosmonauts used to sit. And there's going to be some tricky bits on here, because those things there have to be made into spheres. So I don't know how they're going to look, but we'll see how they turn out. Now, this space capsule is coming on pretty nice. I like the way they're doing this, but there's a few little thrusters to add on here. There we are, I've put one on already, and there's 3 more of those. Well, the bottom part of this Vostok space capsule is done, and now I'm going to have to try and create the top part, which is this sphere, and it's going to be made up of a series of rings like this. I don't think it's going to look perfect, but we'll see how it turns out. Now it's time to join these 2 together. Now I'm coming to the end of this build, and I've come to these. Now these are meant to be little spherical oxygen tanks, and they're a bit fiddly to cut them out. You've just got to take your time. So you end up with that, and then I have been rolling it around here to make it into a round shape, and then just gluing it into a circle. Now you end up with this thing that looks like a bit of a crown. Now to start with, I tried folding these in and gluing them together with super glue, and it ended up looking like that, which wasn't very rounded. So I designed this little plastic mold and 3D printed it. And what you do is just put some glue on the inside of here, and then you start to just bend these ends in. And you put one end in there, put the top on, press the two together, hold it together with a little clamp. Then you can release it, and what comes out is actually quite a nicely shaped little sphere. And I've made a few of these now, and they're coming out pretty well. Not a perfect sphere, but much better than if you just tried to glue them together. Well, that's it with the oxygen tanks on, and that's made a real difference. I think that looks pretty good to say that those are made out of paper. So now it's time to fasten this onto the top of the rocket. Now these are the struts that fasten the space capsule onto the top of the rocket, and they're going to take a fair amount of delicate cutting out. This lattice work has got some strengtheners on the inside like that, which I think is going to make it a lot stronger. Well, I've got the sub-assemblies of this rocket ready to put together now, but before I do that, I'm going to finish off the rockets at the bottom, and that's all of these. So there's still a fair amount of cutting out and gluing to go before we finally put it all together. Well, here's the first engine, the first of 20 of the big ones, and again I've 3D printed a little mold here because it helps to make it the right shape by forcing it onto there. Otherwise it's quite difficult to get them round. So 1 down, 19 to go of those, and then there's the smaller ones. Now the inside of these rocket motors is one of the few parts of this model that isn't actually self-coloured, and they don't actually look very good inside there, and I did consider painting them or colouring them in, but instead I decided to 3D print these little thin red caps, and those are just going to go in there like that, which I think makes it look a lot better. And they'll also add a little bit of strength to these because the model's going to be standing on these motors, and this will give it a lot more strength. So hopefully that'll look a lot better. Well, I've finally got all the sub-assemblies finished, including all those rocket engines, and these are now ready to go on to the main rocket. Well, I finally got this rocket put together, and I've got to say it takes a lot of time to make one of these paper kits, especially all those rockets at the bottom. But anyway, here it is. It's finished, and I think it looks pretty spectacular. There you've got on the bottom 20 big rockets, 12 little ones, and the 4 rocket boosters on the outside, signed by the 4 Russian cosmonauts. And then up at the top here, the Vostok space capsule. And just to finish that off, we have the fairing that goes onto the top. This used to blow off during the launch. And so there it is, finished. I'm going to leave you with some still pictures of the finished product. But for now, that's it for me. And I'll see you next time on Modelling Misadventures.